Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we can all agree that anyone who violates the national labor relations rules, who violates the law, should be held liable for those unfair labor practices. And I would like to think we can all agree that is true, whether it is the employer or someone associated with the unions. This bill, however, does not apply penalties across the board. H.R. 2474 levies additional civil penalties against businesses and, in fact, against corporate officers and directors who can also be held individually liable for unfair labor practices, but does not similarly apply those to union leaders. This amendment would change that. Again, it's a fundamental part of our justice system is equal application of the law and equal penalties. This, by the way, was important in Pennsylvania, the state where I'm from, and I want to share a story that I hope some of my colleagues can take a lesson from. In 2014, in Pennsylvania, we had members of a union, the Iron Workers Local 401, literally calling themselves thugs, which was an acronym for those helpful union guys, burned down a Quaker meeting house in retaliation against job sites that weren't using Local 401 members as workers. And there was a loophole in the state law which the union had used as an exemption from criminal statutes against stalking or harassment if the activity took place in the context of a labor dispute. Months of violent harassment and intimidation, unfortunately, ultimately led to full-blown arson. Now, a member of that group, they were charged. They were convicted for arson under the federal law. Their ringleader, Joseph Doherty, was sentenced to 230 months in prison and ordered to pay $558,000 in restitution. But a part of their defense, defending their actions of stalking and harassment, was that the law did not apply to them as it did to other individuals. Pennsylvania, in reaction to that, learned its lesson and passed a law that would apply penalties equally across the board, whether one was a member of a union or not. And our Governor Wolf, in fact, the Democratic governor, had the courage to sign legislation that would fix this loophole and take steps toward stopping this kind of violence. That's why I'm offering this amendment to ensure that workers are protected, are equally protected from retaliation. Again, as I said, Republicans agree that bad actors who violate the law should be punished and such behavior should be deterred. But unfortunately, in the writing of this law, my colleagues across the aisle seem to believe that this principle only should be applied when it's illegal behavior by employees and that union bosses should be let off the hook. So again, I urge my colleagues to adopt this amendment, leveling the playing field between employer and union unfair labor practices, lest they expose where their true priorities lie when it comes to worker interests versus union boss interests. I yield back.